delighted to be part of the panel. Oh, recording is in progress. I'm delighted to be a part of this panel and to introduce and very lightly moderate this discussion. A terrific panel we have here for all of you today. And I'd just like to quickly introduce them before I hand them over to you. And they are, we begin with Carolyn Friesen and Robbie Percy, who are a creative team, and they are both associate creative directors at the fabulous agency Rethink, maybe familiar to some of you. We also have Hubert Kang, who is a photographer and director. He specializes in advertising photography, and he works out of Vancouver. I'm sorry. And finally, we have Sara Morely, who is an artist and designer living in Montreal. And so to kick it off, I'm going to turn the session over to Carolyn and Robbie. Take it away.
Nice.
Perfect.
Hello.
Perfect.
We have a little presentation we're just going to take you through that kind of shows a little bit of our background and the type of work that you're able to do when you go into the world of advertising. I'm just going to pull it up here. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Robbie, do you want to try and, oh wait, I have it. I'm just on the wrong slide. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, it looks great.
Nice.
Amazing.
Well,
So go, yeah, take it away, Caroline. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to say just a little bit of stuff about us. We've worked in advertising for a little bit over 6 years now. We're a creative team at Rethink, but we didn't start here. We both had very different paths to get to this agency. I think we've been at maybe 3 or 4 different agencies before here. We've made all kind of, different work for all kinds of brands, from No Frills to BMW to Scotiabank. And we love making all kinds of stuff, from ads to clothing to video games and pretty much everything. That's kind of the world of advertising now. Before, when we were in school and I was getting taught by Bingham here, I feel like the portfolio back then was like 3 print ads and some headlines, and now it's like completely changed to like, what can you do on Twitter? People are even submitting like crazy case studies. So the world has really evolved even in the past 6 years that we've been working in this industry. So I guess we'll just get into some of our work. This is just to show you a breadth of advertising and show you that it's really, an ad is not as simple as just a commercial anymore. There's just so much more that you can do with brands. So the first one is a No Frills hauler campaign. We did this, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. So back in the day, it was pretty shameful to be shopping at No Frills. People didn't pride themselves on shopping there. You don't want to say that you shop at a budget grocery store. However, we wanted to change that and flip that on its head and make people proud to shop at No Frills. So we created kind of like this hype streetwear line. We teased it as if like how Drake would kind of tease like his like music coming out by creating these like wall postings that looked kind of more like a tour poster type of vibe. And then we launched the whole thing with a crazy music video where there was like smoke, people flying in the stores, slow motion, and like cars doing donuts in the parking lot. So it was a very fun and crazy campaign. And so that was just the first year, and just to show you how things kind of like evolve and how brands can kind of change over time. The next year we launched, the next year we launched a vinyl. So we created all these different raps and hired all of these different artists and rappers to sing about No Frills. So there was one called Bag It Up, and it was about bagging your groceries instead of buying a bag. There was another one called Picante, and it was about like the spice aisle and all the spices that No Frills has to offer. And what's interesting about this is that like when we like you don't think of like a grocery store tapping into culture. And the cool thing about this is that it can actually get a lot of buzz. And with that, we had Jimmy Fallon actually ripping on this campaign, which we actually loved because any press is good press. So there's like a 3-minute long segment of him and like Questlove just like making fun of our album, and we loved it so much. So that's the type of stuff that makes us really happy, and at the end of the day really makes everything kind of worth it. It's when you have somebody as big as Jimmy Fallon ripping on your work, even though you've been working for it for the past like 6 months. So the next one, Robbie, I don't know if you want to talk about this one.
Yeah, sure. So this one was a pretty simple brief that we got from kind of Boston Pizza. That was just kind of like announcing patio season at Boston Pizza. So what we did was actually created, we all know that kind of tiny little thing that goes in the middle of the pizza. It's called a pizza saver. And it kind of looks like this tiny little table. So we made we literally 3D printed these little 3D patio chairs and sent them out in pizzas. And then this one kind of took off as well, and kind of, everyone kind of reacted to this the way that you would expect them to. First of all, everyone loves miniatures. And second of all, everyone was kind of like, I really want these. So this was a thing that we printed these and put these in a handful of pizzas and took some photos of them and put them out on the internet. And then it kind of really took off and went viral from there. So like Caroline was saying, just another example of how an ad doesn't really have to be an ad anymore. It can be kind of, more things that brands can kind of do. And that's kind of why we really like kind of like working in the industry that we do.
And with this one, we had the fat Jewish like retweeted or posted on his story, and he was like, "My dreams have come true." And I was like, well, not my dream has come true, because somebody who is famous, loves the work. Next one here, we just wanted to show, because again, like advertising, you think it's all just like photography or video films and whatnot, but there's also like a cool craft you can do with it. And this one was an idea that Robbie was like mustering on for months before we actually worked together, and then we both worked on it together. And this one was interesting because it was for a night course at Toronto School of Art that you could take. So it's like not for people who are in like post-secondary, it's just for regular people. But the interesting thing is that we wanted to take this super literal and like very meta, and actually got like a real painter to create these Renaissance style paintings, and just show how you can make your nights more beautiful. So here's just a couple of examples. And then this is probably our favorite, just a girl scooping out her kitty litter. But yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the medium is the message with this one. Robbie, you want to take away this last one?
Yeah, and this is probably our most recent piece of work that just came out. It's very Caravaggio. That was the inspiration for sure. This next one is something that we recently did for Scotiabank. Scotiabank was a new kind of piece of business for Rethink, just in the past year, and this is kind of the first big thing that we did for them. So they're obviously one of the biggest hockey sponsors. They're Scotiabank Arena. They sort of sponsor kids teams all across the country. They're kind of a really big name kind of in hockey sponsorship. And as we all kind of know, like hockey isn't necessarily the most diverse sport. Even today, the NHL kind of lags behind the other major sports associations in terms of promoting diversity and inclusion and being anti-racist. And when you look at most hockey teams, most of the players are still white. So Scotiabank is kind of really looking to promote diversity and inclusion within hockey. So we worked with a bunch of hockey players, PK Subban, a former Pittsburgh Penguin, Trevor Daley, Jana Hefford, a Canadian Olympian, some really amazing hockey players to kind of create this spot that you may or not have seen, but we'll leave a link for it. That kind of has them calling out the real things that have been said to them, the real discrimination that they faced, and then kind of turning that on its head to kind of promote diversity and inclusion in hockey. So that's something that we're really proud of that came out just a couple months ago now.
Yeah. And that is a preview of our
Yeah, and then I think that's kind of like some of the work that we've done. And I think we can just talk quickly about kind of like how we both got into this. I think before there was, for most of my life, I didn't know that this was a job, and I didn't know that I could kind of like get paid to come up with cool stuff and have thousands and even millions of people kind of see it. And that's, still to this day when I kind of take a step back, it's pretty cool to kind of realize that. So I actually went to school initially for political science, and did like a 4-year degree at Laurier, and was going to be a political scientist of some sort before realizing that definitely wasn't for me and wasn't my vibe. So I took some time off. I did lots of kind of odd jobs here and there, and eventually ended up in the Humber copywriting program. So I'm a writer by trade, and Caroline is an art director. And we kind of work together to kind of make these campaigns. And doing that program was when I kind of first realized that there was this kind of world, and that you could kind of get paid to just come up with crazy ideas and then watch as people help you bring them to life, which is still kind of my favorite part of the job for sure.
Yeah, I guess I'll go into how I got into
Yeah.
this. So, when I was like 13 or something like that, my uncle gave me like a bootleg Photoshop, and from there, like I just really liked like being on the computer and designing stuff. And during high school, I took like media arts, so I loved I took marketing as well, so I liked that side of things. And I was kind of a little bit lost. I thought I wanted to be like a media arts teacher, be a graphic designer, but then I went to like kind of like a guidance counselor, and she showed me all these different programs, and she said, you should apply to this Bachelor of Creative Arts program. I didn't listen to them, and I went to McMaster instead for multimedia communication studies. And then after a term of that, I said, I don't think this is it. I actually don't want to be a graphic designer. I want to go into advertising, just because I also loved like Super Bowl ads. Like I hate football, but I loved watching the Super Bowl ads. And I always thought that stuff was just so interesting. So yeah, I just went to got into Boca. And from then I also kind of struggled with if I wanted to be a graphic designer or an art director. But what changed is that like, I actually love coming up with ideas for things. And I'm not the best writer. So the best part about my job is that I can come up with some ideas, and then Robbie can help me fine tune them and make them make a little bit more sense. But I love having a collaborator and working with somebody else, because then you can kind of just bounce off of each other, which is always awesome. And I also love just like the behind of the scenes of stuff like that. So like being on set is one of like my favorite things. So you get to like work with a director, you get to do like wardrobe, casting, you get to like pick the locations, you get to come up with scripts together. So it's just a great like collaborative process. And I love how at every single step, it's always you're in like a part of a team, and you're not just alone and doing it by yourself. You always have somebody else to kind of bounce off of.
Cool. If I could just step in here, like a couple of things that emerge from that really kind of resonate. One is the fact that you kind of had to find your way to it. And I think this is a thing that creative people need to understand, is that there's no obvious path. And you're going to, as students, as people, you're trying to figure out where do you want to do and where do you want to go and how do you want to work this out in your own lives. You have to accept that you might take some wrong paths, but you're going to find your way. And it's a process that will take some time, and no one can tell you how to go from the A to B. You're going to have to do that yourself, find your own path. And when you do find your own path, it'll be true. And the other thing I would just throw in there is just that the fact that so much of this is about collaboration in the world that you work in, and that collaboration is really energizing and a lot of fun. And there's almost nothing more fun than working with other really talented people, because that just sort of makes it such an exciting thing. And advertising is just a place where that collaboration is a requirement. So that makes it kind of extra fun. Anything else you guys want to add before I hand it over to Hubert?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, thank you for summing that up so succinctly. That was
I
tight. Yeah.
know.
My pleasure. Hubert, if you'd like to take over, love to hear your perspective.
Sure, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Hubert. I'm a photographer and director. I would just like to jump in on the collaboration part of the conversation, and it is so important. As Robbie and Caroline, they're making their presentation, and I was kind of reflecting on my career, and I've been a photographer and director for about 14 years now, and now I didn't go through the traditional path, going through our school, advertising school, photography school, kind of take different paths. But I realized the reason why I love this industry, what we're doing, is the people, is the collaboration. It's for me, I think my unique, well, not unique take, my take is that what we do is such an interesting way to open us up to the world. It's like all of a sudden we've got this key that we are allowed to be in places that I usually would have no business to be in. Um, I moved to Canada as a teenager, and language was a little wonky in the beginning. But what I found was that through the visual language, all of a sudden, I have so many more ways to communicate with people, and all of a sudden, I'm allowed to be in so many different places, different groups, different settings, and that's been so rewarding, and it's really cool to see that we all come back, we'll land on collaboration. Maybe I'll add community. I think that's also a really important part of what we do, that's kind of my take on it. Yeah.
Cool. Actually, if I could just probe a little bit there, Hubert, you mentioned that you had an unconventional path into becoming a photographer and director. Could you unpack a little bit of that for us and tell us how you got there?
Sure. Yeah. I went to UBC as a business student. So that's when I first started. I think I went to business school because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, we were all so young, right? Like 20, 19. Like, how would I know what I wanted to do, right? I guess I'll pick business because that seems to be the right thing to do. And so I did that. But all throughout business school, I ended up joining all this different type of I don't know if it's still a thing, but back in the day, my day, there were still like student clubs. People would do different things, and I ended up helping publish a literature magazine. So random. So I did that, and I did business school. And the best thing about that is that I realized that I never want to be in the office setting ever again in my life. So it took me a long time to finish it. And the moment I finish it, I'm out of here. So I then I took a after business school, I kind of took initiative. Like I realized that, hey, I am just so deeply curious about the world and about people, and what is the best way for me to meet more new people, go to places that I would never be able to go. So my first job out of business school is that I landed this is back in the day when Expedia was taking off. Like, you guys remember the 360 photos that you go into your hotel room, you want to see what a hotel looks like? So I somehow landed a job where I am the guy that's doing that. So I'll be sent to Southwestern United States, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma. Those were my zones, and I'll be photographing one motel a day. So I will wake up, drive to the next town, drive 3 hours to the next town in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, shoot the motel for the afternoon, if they have Wi-Fi, they're amazing. That's a day. If they have an Applebee, I'm eating really well that night. And then I wake up again, move on to the next. So I did that, did that for a while. Then I saw all these cool places. Then I decided I wanted to go back to school. So I actually went back to school for documentary photography in London. I went to back then it's so old. It's called the London College of Printing, and now it's the University of the Arts London. So I did that. I did documentary photography, but somehow ended up in advertising. So it's a bit of a windy road, but yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm just working with people.
That's really cool. And it's, again, it's one of the things, a couple of things that strike me about that is, first of all, you kind of found the photography because you jumped on a particular opportunity. And there's just no telling which opportunity is going to take you to the place that becomes the thing that you are really good at and that you really love. And so I think being open to the possibilities of the experiences that you have as you go through them, I think is a really key thing. And I think creative people are often more open to that. We're curious, we're trying to find the paths through things like this, but staying open to them and looking for the possibilities that are not necessarily conventional routes is I think a really important thing to bear in mind if you're a creative person developing, trying to develop into a creative career, for sure.
I always think it's really essential for a creative person to kind of live an interesting life. I think what we do is such a reflection of who we are. When on these projects, we're asked to make 1,000 decisions a minute. Like you are, everything you do, it's almost like everything you make is a self-portrait. You have to make these decisions, and these decisions come from who you are as a person. So if all you know is art, if all you know is photography, I think the work is kind of boring. If you go out and do all these interesting things, then you're gonna come back and make interesting work.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that I think any of the panel would probably concur with, it, that the role of creativity the role of curiosity in creativity is absolutely vital. And as you say, it's all about having lots and lots of inputs into your creativity and being able to make these connections. So being that kind of person who's open to experiences and looking for experiences and just generally curious about the world and people is a really, really kind of crucial aspect to it, for sure. Would you like to add anything else, or shall we move over to Sarah at this stage? You're good? Okay, terrific. Thanks very much. That was terrific. Sarah, you have a longer perspective on things and a bit more of an arc to take us through. You want to take over from here, please?
I do indeed. Hello, folks. Let me just share my screen. Hang on a moment. All right. So let's go. Yeah, so I've got a wee tale to tell you, a tale of my twists and turns in the design world over quite a number of years. Hang on, got to get to the right window. There we go. In the mid-'80s, I left England and moved to Montreal to go to art school at Concordia University. I didn't know a soul when I got here. I was a young punk rocker and liked to draw scenes from my wrong side of the tracks downtown life. I titled this series A Woman's Nightmare. But a year into my studio arts program, I got pregnant and decided to keep the baby. I had few resources and needed to find a job ASAP. A punk rock friend was a typographer, and she got me a gig apprenticing as a mechanical paste-up artist at the studio where she worked. It was the dying days of photo typesetting, with desktop publishing on the horizon. I'd cut the tape into sections with an X-Acto, use wax to attach the pieces to a layout board, and add overlays with rubylith masking film to block out areas of color. Old school. I learned to think on my feet. I'd sketch out my ideas before making a cut. It was costly to make errors. I enjoyed the work, but periodically, the studio took on jobs I found morally reprehensible. An arms catalogue for GE came into the shop, and I refused to work on it. I knew my days there were numbered. All the while, I continued taking art classes at night. My courses were in drawing and painting, but I got interested in performance and video. Guido Molinari was one of my instructors, and I convinced him that my videos were moving paintings. He agreed. As luck would have it, I was hired to teach video editing and DigiPaint workshops at Concordia's state-of-the-art multimedia Amiga lab, where I'd been creating my videos. Then I joined a fledgling film production company, co-owned by a colleague at the lab, and began designing titles and posters for feature films. I'd never taken a design course, but had a good knowledge of art history and learned on the job, embracing the punk rock do-it-yourself ethos. In 1999, we opened Design Postimage as a separate company, and I was its creative director. Rather than look for a well-paid agency job, I wanted to build a boutique studio with my friends and only work on projects that we believed in. Through our contacts in the film community and at the university, jobs began to materialize. In the early 2000s, Concordia's Native Access to Engineering program asked us to develop an interactive multimedia web feature presenting a typical day in the lives of 5 Indigenous engineers from across Canada. The site was aimed at Indigenous students living in remote areas who now had access to high-speed internet. They could follow the engineers from dawn to dusk and discover engineering from an Indigenous perspective as a holistic, sustainable, and environmentally conscious profession. We created flash games to show how practical applications of maths and science principles could solve real-world problems. Bringing all these elements together online was novel at that time, and the project won the 2005 Canadian Education Association Achievement Award. Through a connection with the writer, we were asked to create a series of architectural coffee table books for Canderel, a national real estate developer. We collaborated with photographer Christian Fleury to document the conception and construction of their landmark buildings. Our mandate was to detail the labor that goes into erecting buildings of this scale and to foreground the construction workers. Every person who worked on the project was listed and thanked in the appendix, and they all received a book. Work we'd done promoting local films led to a gig with Cirque du Soleil, creating one-of-a-kind constructed documents used to present their visions for international events to prospective clients. These were always high-pressure jobs with incredibly short turnaround times. I'd head into the boardroom where the team described the proposed production, and I'd have to come up with a design concept on the spot. My fine art training came in handy. This piece was given to the Queen of Jordan on her private jet. It illustrated the theatrical extravaganza Cirque du Soleil was planning for the One Drop Foundation's annual gala at the National Building Museum in Washington. Over the years, we've turned down lucrative proposals when we find the messages and products problematic. I'll never take on a project for money alone. I need to feel that my talent and time are being used to promote ideas that are worthy. We've been content to be a sustainable business, picking and choosing our collaborations with care. I want to like and respect the people I work with. Integrity is important. Recently, we've been working with the Canadian Association of Midwives on their global initiatives. This has led to a project for South Sudan's Ministry of Health and the UN, collaborating with an illustrator to create booklets about family planning aimed at youth. As the young war-torn nation struggles with low levels of literacy, we aim to communicate ideas about birth control in pictures, using few words. It's a joy to have meaningful work, imagining a teenage girl on the other side of the world, living in an internally displaced persons camp, looking at our booklets and learning something. In the end, I did manage to complete my BFA, though it took me 9 years. And I've always pursued personal art projects on the side, experimental documentaries, storytelling, and currently graphic novels. What I love most about my work is that I never know what it's going to
think Sarah might be frozen.
Okay, I think looks like Sarah may be having a little bit of Wi-Fi difficulty. But I actually, is she coming back on here? While we wait for her to reboot, I would just sort of hop in here a little bit and first of all, what tremendous work that is, and I just want to point out the. Oh, is she back? Waiting. No, okay. Anyway, just the fact that you know, as creative people, you are hugely powerful, and the work that you can do has so much potential for contributing to the greater good. And I'm sure that Carolyn and Robbie and Hubert would agree to this. We get these opportunities, and we can seek out these opportunities as well. That you know, you can be creative and you can work for a greater good and causes. And really make a difference on them as well. So it's not really just about doing your own thing and making pretty stuff sometimes as well. There's you know, we are creative people are great potential contributors. The other thing, and again, I'll just throw this out to the panel while we're on it, is that Sara mentioned her side projects. And I'm personally a big proponent of these, and I think they're crucially important for people. Anyone who's a professionally creative person needs to have personal projects to keep their creative batteries recharged. And I'm just wondering if I threw it out to you three, what are the side gigs and side projects that you like to do to help keep you fresh?
Before the pandemic, I had like an art club, kind of. It was called Good Fun Club. And it was actually like a lot of people in the industry would come, whether you were like a photographer, director, editor, or even like an accounts person or like a strategist. And every night, every time that we would do it, it would be like just a very rudimentary craft, like a construction paper collage, that sort of thing. And you would just create your own thing and then name it and then share it with the whole crew. And there'd just be like 20 people at a time. And it was such a nice thing to go to a space where like whatever your idea was, it was always going to get a little bit praised for. Like everybody would clap, everybody loved seeing each other's work, and it kind of let you just relax a little bit more and not take everything so seriously. So that was something that we did before the pandemic, because now it's like very hard to get people together. But that actually really helped me to not have to take everything so seriously. And it was kind of nice to not have like your work being judged or like for a client or anything like that. So yeah, also just like doing that on your own really helps too, like doing collages, like making little clay things, just working with your hands kind of gets you into a different space and works a little bit of a different side of your brain. So I find that always kind of helps, just getting back to the basics.
Yeah, that's the thing about actually using your hands. You know, so much of what we do creatively is kind of got us locked into screens. And I think there's a whole different part of your brain that gets engaged when you just put that damn thing aside and get real materials and physical analog things and play with them. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I throw that out to the people who are watching this and are considering this kind of creative career. Don't get yourselves locked into computers and screens the whole time. You know, use that other part of your brain, get analog, because the worst thing that can happen to you is that it'll just refresh your creativity, but it's also so much fun.
And I would say that even when we are working, like Caroline and I, so much of our best brainstorming sessions, I mean, I haven't been able to do this for a couple years now, but would be kind of like in coffee shops when we close our laptops and just have our notebooks out and are just writing notes and drawing things and that sort of thing. When, like, even just the simple analog act of like a pen moving on paper actually does help unlock ideas and just sort of a feeling that is so different than clicking and going between tabs and all this stuff that just can feel overwhelming and can kind of like clutter your brain up a little bit.
Yeah. I also think it's limiting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you know, the computers impose limits on what you can do with them by their very nature. So you can kind of put it aside for a minute, that you can consider other possibilities that aren't limited in that same fashion. Hubert, what about you? What do you do? Do you have side projects and passion projects that you work on as well?
I do, and like I agree 100%. It is the thing that's keeping me going for sure. You know, one of the reasons why I focus so much on advertising photography is that it allows me during downtimes. It allows me to take on personal projects, and well, so I've been working on a couple of personal projects that are documentary in nature. So that's kind of like where my passion is really outside of my I struggle with that for a little bit, you know. Sometimes like, oh, what do you do outside of photography? It's like, well, I love photography, that's kind of like, this is what I do. But then I realized that I can go into different genres and whatnot. So I'm working on a couple of documentary projects, and I also founded a small production company a few years ago, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Sarah was talking about earlier. You know, like I really want to work with good people and work on projects that I truly care about. So we've been working on these little spots for nonprofits. You know, like causes that we care about. Working on one with currently. We're working on one with this group here in Vancouver. It's called Hives for Humanity. So they operate urban gardens, you know, for urban bee farming for the more disadvantaged communities here in town. And so that's on the documentary side. But I also work on this is all over the place. But my wife and my studio mates, they are all artists and illustrators. So I've been helping out with, I've been collaborating with illustrators, you know, to find different take on photography. And I've been helping, I've been painting murals with them as well. So it's like going back to the hand axe, but it's, you know, it just takes me totally out of the digital space. So yeah, this many personal projects, and but I think I agree with you that it's extremely important. It's extremely important to spend the time to do them, and if anything, I find them to be the most rewarding thing of this career.
It's cool. I love the thought of doing a documentary about bees. Like, you know, like just thinking about the, you know, how much fun you could have like with like the super close-up photos of the bees and stuff like that, and like that's really awesome. And what a cool, what a cool organization to be doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fantastic because, you know, it really allows you to think outside of my usual box. And in this projects like that, in that bee project, it's an overall thing. I kind of decided that for my career, you know, if there's one consistent theme for all my personal projects, is that I wanted to have something to do with animals. You know, we all pick our causes, right? So my passion is animals and animal welfare. So I you know, bee is one of them. And then I'm working with other types of animals. It's all, yeah. I kind of like, I really admire some photographers that would, you know, have a consistent theme throughout their career to work on one topic, because, you know, it could get so deep, it could get so big, right? And but it just keeps me going.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So we're waiting to see if Sarah reconnects. But maybe I'd like to make sure we oh, there she is. Sarah, you're back. Are you there? Audible? No? Okay. Are you good to go?
Hello again. That was classic. Just absolutely booted off completely and totally, couldn't get back in. How far did you see?
We just got through the really cool architectural books that had all the names of the workers in them. So that was
Okay.
the point we've gotten to. No, we got to the contraception books.
Okay, you got to the contraception books.
Yep.
Did you get to the end of the contraception books, or were you?
We're getting close. I'm not sure how long it went. We were 2 or 3 slides in, I think, on that.
You know, can I just start again, or have I just now interrupted you all terribly?
Well, carry on, carry on.
Okay, so I've just got a few more quick things to say. What I will do, I will go back through the South Sudan stuff. I'll just repeat there. So that might be, whoops, okay. So let me just get there. All right. Okie doke. So, yeah, again, classic day of computer not being happy. Okay, yeah, so these are the South Sudanese projects that we're working on with the Canadian Association of Midwives. And as a young war-torn nation, they struggle with low levels of literacy. So our aim with these booklets was to communicate ideas about birth control to youth using few words. And really, it was a joy to have such meaningful work. I imagined a teenage girl on the other side of the world living in an internally displaced persons camp and looking at our booklets and learning something. In the end, I did manage to complete my BFA, though it took me 9 years, and I've always pursued personal art projects on the side, experimental documentaries, storytelling, and currently graphic novels. What I love most about my work is that I never know what it's going to look like until it's finished. It's a process of discovery. Finding a balance between paid design gigs and my own art practice continues to be my biggest challenge. But I try as best I can to leave enough space in my schedule to allow for time to play and explore. And that is my story.
Terrific. That's brilliant, and I think that it's interesting that you know, trying to find that balance, and we talked about it a little when you were rebooting there, the notion of the need to balance the work you do as a professional to be paid and make a living, and the work you need to do as an artist to keep yourself, you know, well, sane, but also fresh and engaged and really functioning well. So we're gonna I think we're gonna turn over to some questions from the floor, but maybe just to launch us off. I know this is one of those things that young people who are trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives are always kind of curious about. Just the real kind of basic thing of what is a typical day look like for each of you. And maybe if we could just run through that one to begin quickly. And maybe could we maybe start with Hubert, and then we'll go to Sarah, and then to Robbie and Carolyn.
Typical day.
So I put you on the spot there, Hubert.
Well, a typical day for me is really rare. But you know, it's maybe I can put it into two categories. You know, I have the pre-production and post-production days, and I have the shoot days. You know, they're very different. Pre-production, post-production days, you know, like this is when I really do my homework and I get to, for example, yesterday, I was in casting, and I was in casting all day. I probably talked to 80 people, you know, just trying to get into to prepare for this upcoming commercial. So it's a typical pre-production, post-production day is mostly buried in front of the computer. I'm talking to a bunch of people. I spend a bunch of time on the phone, you know, just to figure out all these production details. You know, even though I am the creative, it's important for me personally to be involved in the production details. So they go hand in hand, right? We're not scrambling on the actual shoe days, and on actual shoe days, that's where the fun. That's maybe only about 5%, 10% of what I do. You know, to actually, you know, like if I shoot a project or 2 projects a month, then that's a really busy month. Because each project takes so much pre-production and post-production. on the actual shoot day, and it's super fun. You know, the shoot could be really small, where maybe just me or maybe me with a couple of assistants, to a bigger shoot where maybe we have 40, 50 people running around. You know, that's on a typical like a commercial spot when we're making a commercial spot, and it ranges from, you know, like lots of traveling to you know, getting through airports, to I find directors, oh, it was kind of funny. I always find myself hiding in the tent talking really quietly on a radio. That's my typical director day. Whereas on a photography day, I'm just all over the place. You know, I'm sore by the end of the day. But yeah, it varies, and that's what I love about it, because you know, it takes, like, I'm catering to the introverted side of me and the extroverted side of me, and it's fun because every day is different.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, there's always all that setup before you get to actually do the creative work, right?
Oh yeah. By the time we do creative work, at least from my point of view, like it's already done. Like the creative homework should have been done on the day we are executing, and I intentionally leave. We do so much homework so that on the day we have room for happy surprises, right? We're not scrambling. We actually intentionally leave room for that. So that's kind of how we approach it. Yeah.
Sarah, how about you? How does your day shape up?
Well, as time went on, it became clear to me that I wanted my studio and home to be in the same place. So we bought a loft and divided it. So half of the loft is the studio and half of the loft my home. So I'm a 30-second commute to my desk, which is great. What's really, really important for me is that because I'm doing a lot of hands-on, I want to work and do creative work when I'm in the mood and when it's going to be most productive. So I often get up really early and, you know, put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, and then work for sort of 2 or 3 hours before anybody can bother me at all. And that's often the best work of the day. And the rest of the day, I like it to be very organic. And certainly with COVID, that's been even easier because I'm here now alone. All the people that I collaborate with are in their own places. And I have got a team of people that I work with, photographer, writer, other designers, web people and whatnot. We're all good friends. And we all are quite idiosyncratic and have our own projects in addition to the work we're doing together. So there's room for that. And in an ideal week, every second day, the first 2 to 3 hours of my day, if I can manage it, I'm doing my own projects. And also in the evening, for my graphic novel, I'm sitting watching a movie with my gorgeous new iPad on my lap and I'm drawing. And so if my day's bookended with my own work, then, you know, the design stuff happens in the middle. And I need control of my life, and I need to be able to run when I want to run and go for a walk when I want to go for a walk, and as much as possible. Obviously, I'm there now at this stage in my career. I spent, 20 years being a workaholic and hardly sleeping and raising a kid and just trying to shove everything in. And I'm now kind of getting to a place where I'm saying, if I could go back, I would tell my younger self, money's great, but it is not the most important thing. And I'd rather take on less work, be really happy with the work I do, and have more time for myself. Because what I notice is when I have that time and that freedom, the design work is so much better if I'm there and approach it with a clear head. And but I say that after, say, 20 years of being a workaholic, and I have finally learned that sleep is good. And when you do sleep enough, it turns out, you're in a better mood, and and you're healthier and all that stuff.
All that business of you can sleep when you're dead is actually total nonsense. And I think it's very interesting, and I think this is something that all creative people have a process of figuring out for themselves. what is the right pattern in my day? When am I most creative? When do I need the time to be just alone and to focus really intensely on my own stuff, as opposed to the times when I need to be collaborative and need to be working with other people? And early in the morning, I think, is where a lot of people end up. Maybe after once you get old enough to be okay with getting up really early in the morning. But however you do it as a creative person, I think that finding ways to carve out those chunks of time on a regular basis is really kind of crucial. And as you say, then figuring out what's important to you in terms of what's the work you want to take on and what's the work you don't want to take on, in order to keep everything in a most fruitful balance. So I think that's a super cool message that people definitely need to hear. Carolyn and Robbie, I'll turn it over to you guys. I don't mean to sort of call you one person, but you do work together. So I'm guessing your day kind
That's
of
one person.
So we're one person. Yeah.
Yeah. Our life is not as chill and organic as Sarah's, I'll say that. But every day, much like Hubert, it's like very different every day. So we're always in different stages of different projects. So whether it's like immediately getting a brief and having to like ideate on that, but at the same time, we might be working on another brand where we're in pre-production, and then on top of that, like another one where we're in post-production and we're like figuring that out. So it all, sorry, I'm getting a phone call right now, but it all of our days definitely look a little bit differently. But some days are a little bit more stressful than others, but yeah. Robbie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I think we're often doing like many of those different stages kind of all simultaneously. I think, to your point, we're definitely in the workaholic phase that Sarah was describing, but I hope to get out of it soon. But yeah, I think kind of to Richard's point as well, like for me, I definitely try and find that time like early in the morning, often kind of like before, like an hour or so before other people are necessarily working, to actually when I can actually write scripts and actually put that work in on like crafting the work that we're working on, when we're not kind of having to have discussions with lots of different people and have meetings and present and defend the work and all that stuff. That's kind of the time when I'm like the most productive, and then the later mornings and afternoons are kind of better for talking about things, working on things collaboratively. But I definitely really value that kind of like early morning, just me creative time to actually bang things out and get them done for sure.
And because of that, I'm the late night. So I do because, Robbie does his scripts, then we collaborate. And then if I have extra work to do, I like doing it at night. I kind of like, enjoy just sitting at my desk alone at home and being able to crank out the work. So it works for both of us.
I think that's often a dynamic between writers and art directors as well, just because I mean you can't really design it until it's written a little bit. So my bad.
Very cool. We have a question from the floor, and it's a good one, and I think you'll all be able to relate to it. And the question is that creativity so often involves going through a lot of not so good or half-baked ideas to get to the really good stuff, and especially as a very young person in the business, it's really kind of hard to know and be confident about it. How do you work through that, and how do you ward off the fear of failure that also comes along with that in the back of your heads?
I could jump in on this. I would say that the fear of failure never fully goes away for me anyway. I've been doing this for a few years now, and it's still the blank page is still kind of as scary as it was when I first started. You get a little bit more confident because things tend to have always worked out, and they honestly do always work out in some way. Like everything doesn't ever actually totally crumble in the way that you might imagine in your head. But it does, you always get to something. And the more you kind of do that, I guess the easier and more comfortable it gets. And then in terms of like the sort of half-baked things, like at Rethink in particular, we like really embrace that. And I think it really is just about, especially in that initial creative stage, about coming up with as many kind of like half-baked things as you possibly can. Like there's a saying that like, your best idea could be your first or your 100th, but you won't know until you have 100. So just kind of keep going.
The other thing I would say is I find it really useful to show the work things I'm working on before I show the client to other team members and to my partner. My partner is a director of photography and video producer, and who sometimes has no relationship whatsoever to the work. But I want to get outside people give me honest feedback. And I've got several friends, artist friends in different fields that can do that for me. And I find that can be very, very helpful, particularly when you're under a crunch. Because the thing you don't have when you're racing to a deadline and you're not sleeping enough is you don't have enough, as they say in French, recul. You don't have enough, you're not standing back far enough from it. And that can be really frustrating. And I think one of the most frustrating things is when you know you can do better. And if you had more time, if the project allowed more time, you could develop the ideas. So, and the other thing, I think, if you find yourself spinning your wheels, if there's any chance you can go out for a walk, if there's any chance you can put it down and jump to another project where you're feeling more comfortable, because what can happen when you start to get scared? And for me, the scared has always been when the deadline is scary. The work itself, I know if I have hours and hours, I will work through it. But when I don't have that time, it's like you've got to find tricks. Is it doing some meditation? Is it whatever it is, but just to kind of come back at it with fresh eyes, because people don't think of this profession necessarily. If you're a doctor or a nurse or whatever, you're not necessarily thinking that what we're dealing with feels like life and death. But God, when you're on a deadline, it does feel like pretty extreme.
Super stuff. I just want to be conscious of our time and conscious of our guests' time. And so, Vicky, could we squeeze in one more question for the panel, or?
Yeah, let's go and do one more question.
Okay.
Then we'll wrap it up.
Yep. Okay, great. So maybe we'll just do a quick round the horn on this. And the question is this: what is the worst thing and what is the best thing about your job? And I'll start with Robbie, go to Carolyn, Hubert, and then we'll close off with Sarah. Robbie, best and worst thing about your job?
I'd say the worst thing, and just sort of piggybacking off what Sarah is that feeling, is that stress and those deadlines, because sometimes they do feel quite big. But the best thing, I think, is kind of getting to put something out into the world that a whole bunch of people see and kind of see people's reactions to it. That's kind of something I never thought I would have the opportunity to do, and most people don't in their work, and it's really rewarding and really exciting to see that.
Awesome. Carolyn?
The worst thing I'd say is maybe feedback. Sometimes you just want to get the thing done, and feedback kind of sucks, but it's the way of our lives. And the best thing, I love Robbie's answer, but I love being on set. That's like something that I grew up kind of watching, watching like America's Next Top Model. I wasn't even interested in like the modeling aspect. I was just like, oh my God, I want to be on that set. Like, it looks cool. So that's probably my favorite thing.
Awesome. Hubert?
Yeah, I think the best thing is the collaboration with people, community. I find, being allowed in these places, in these situations, I just find it so interesting and so inspiring. And the people, the different types of people I've met throughout my career, I thought that's the best thing. And I really struggle with the worst thing. As people are talking, I was like, what is the worst thing? It's not that bad, but now I think about
Nothing is that bad. It's all good.
It's all good. I think it's the amount of time that I am peeled away from my family, from my wife, from my dogs, and that's hard. But other than that, I'm very fortunate, and I think it's a really rewarding career.
Terrific. Thank you. Sarah, last word goes to you.
I'd say the worst thing is when you're working with a client and they have bad taste. And you present something wonderful, they think they don't like it, and they say something like, why is it blue? My wife likes orange. That's for sure the worst thing. And I think the best thing is particularly once you've been doing it for a while, and I'm walking downtown and all of a sudden I walk right by this familiar building and look up and see, ooh, that logo on that side of the building that's lit up. I designed that. And when you get distance from work you've done and you see it sort of outside of it, I find every time a gig is finished, it's like I'm on to the next one. That's the past. But then you look at it and go, hey, that was kind of neat. And so it can be extremely rewarding, and to play with creative ideas as a job, it's pretty great. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we would all agree with that sentiment. That's tremendous. No, I think we sort of come to the end of our time, and I just want to thank all of you for being with us. A tremendous discussion and fantastic wisdom, and I'm sure really, really helpful for our audiences. And again, just delightful to have an opportunity to talk to all of you, and especially to see Carolyn again, because she's one of my old students. So anyway, thank you very much, all. Just delightful. Okay,
Good
over to
night.
you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, so much. It's been really interesting. I hope all of our